starts with really understanding who our customers are. Okay. I don't think I shared this with you last week, but I always like this quote from Warren Buffett as it relates to understanding what it is that you're selling. Buffett is famous for saying you can hold a rock concert and that's okay. You can hold a ballet, that's okay. But don't hold a rock concert and advertise it as a ballet. The importance of understanding what it is that you're selling and who are you selling to. And you may recall we watched that video with Harvard business professor Clay Christensen, and he posed the question, what job is it that your customers are hiring your product to do? What job are your customers hiring your product to do? And the last time they needed that job done, who did they hire? Interesting way of looking at your product or service. Something else to think about when you think about your product or service is quote from Ted Levitt, a well-known Harvard professor. He says, people don't want to buy a 1/4-inch drill bit, they want a 1/4-inch hole. So not only understanding the features of what it is that you sell, of your product or service, but more importantly, understanding in the eyes of the consumer, what is the benefit that they expect to gain from your product or service. They don't want a 1-inch drill bit, they need a 1-inch hole, a 1/4-inch hole. What are the benefits of your product or service to your target audience? And then the last, I don't remember if I shared this with you or not, but we were talking about understanding your competition. And oftentimes when we think of competition, we think of other businesses, right? Again, remember we talked about direct and indirect competitors, other businesses. But this is interesting from a recent Harvard Business Review article. They said you are competing with the last best experience that your customer had. You're competing with the last, so it doesn't have to be the same product or service. But if you went to a restaurant recently and you had an amazing experience in that restaurant, and today you go to a doctor's office, in a way, you're expecting that experience at the doctor's office to be just like the experience you had at the restaurant. So we're not only competing with other businesses in terms of competition, we're competing with other experiences that our consumers or our customers are having. I think that's a really profound thought. Okay. All right. We talked about aspirin and vitamins. Okay. I love this quote from Sun Tzu. We're talking about knowing your competitors. Keep your friends close and your enemies even closer. How close are you to your competitors? And then I think I shared this quote from President Lincoln last week. Do we not destroy our enemies when we make them our friends? Again, how can I get to know my competitors? How can I befriend my my competitors? How can I get closer to my competitors? Okay. So now I want to, if you would turn in your, if you've got your notebook already open, turn to the page that says, what is your competitive advantage? What is your competitive advantage? That's where we want to start off this morning. What is your competitive advantage? Jack Welch, the ex-CEO at GE, is famous for saying, if you don't have a competitive advantage, don't compete. You don't have a competitive advantage, don't compete. Well, much of our marketing strategy is based on whatever our competitive advantage is. And essentially your competitive advantage is, how are you different? How are you unique? How does your company stand out? Seth Godin, the famous marketing author and guru, refers to competitive advantage as your purple cow. Imagine you're driving out in the country and you see a herd of cattle, and one of those cows is purple. Well, that cow would really stand out, wouldn't it? You couldn't help but notice that purple cow. And that's what you're looking for in your businesses. What causes you to stand out? What causes your company to be the purple cow? I saw another statistic recently from Janie Smith, who wrote a very good book on competitive advantage. And in her research, she found that 95% of employees lack agreement as to what their company's competitive advantages are. So it's one thing to determine what those competitive advantages are. And then secondly, and equally important, is communicating them internally to your people so that they understand, how do we stand out? How are we unique? How are we different? So let me give you a good way to think about competitive advantage, a way of defining a competitive advantage. And this is on your handout page. 3 things that a competitive advantage must be. Number 1, competitive advantage has to be a core competency of your business. Core competency meaning it's got to be something that you're really good at. Core competency, a strength of your business, something that you do well. Competitive advantage has to be something that you excel at. So that's number 1. Secondly, a competitive advantage, to be a competitive advantage, it has to be unique to your business. If all of your competitors can claim that same competitive advantage, it's not a competitive advantage. It has to be unique. You've got to be able to say, we're the only ones who can do blank, can provide blank. It has to be unique to your business. That's number 2. And third, for something to truly be a competitive advantage, it has to be valued by your customers. It has to be of importance to your customers, because it can be something that your company does really well. It can be unique to your business, but if your customers don't value that aspect of your business, if they say, okay, they're fast, but fast really isn't important, it's not a competitive advantage. It has to be of value to your customers. So core competency, unique, valued by your customers. That's what defines a competitive advantage. So next, in the middle of that page, I'd like for each of you to identify 3 of your competitive advantages today. 3 ways that you separate yourself from your competitors. These would show up on your marketing materials. These would show up on your website. You talk about these all the time. So jot down the first 3 that come to mind. 3 of your company's competitive advantages.